Hello everybody, it's me, Nate, aka Devil Dog, and I'm back with my review of Final Fantasy XVI. This was developed by Creative Business Unit 3 and published by Square Enix and released on June 22nd on PS5. That's right, I'm getting out, I guess, sort of, maybe a day early, but not by that much. It is the 16th main installment in the Final Fantasy series, not counting all of the offshoots, and this is a spoiler-free review. All footage has been taken from the first hour and a half of the game, so there's nothing that's really going to spoil you from the overall spectacle that this game is. Now, what exactly is this? Well, I will say this straight from the heart. They went back to what counts. Yoshi P and the rest of the team at Creative Business Unit 3 went back and created a fantasy realm game. So no, there's not going to be any boy band members pushing a car out of gas, trying to buy cup of noodles and selling you Coleman lanterns and gear. Thank God for that. Honestly, this game is phenomenal in terms of its overall playability, the overall game world, and the plot. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil the plot at all because it is fantastic. It's got lots of stuff going on, lots of corruption. It's dark, it's deep. This is, quote, almost like a rated R movie in terms of the amount of gore and people being killed and the power struggle that is going on with these people, where basically it consists of these characters that are known as dominants, that are people that have the ability to cast icons, aka summons. They can either take on the role as actually being the summons or control them. They're almost like, let's say, atom bombs. They're the reason why the world as a whole hasn't killed each other, because they're like, oh, he's got bombs, I got bombs. It's kind of like modern day American Russia and everything. As long as you have nuclear weapons, no one wants to really drop them. And that's basically what this game is like. As you're going through it, you play as your main character, Clive, and his brother Joshua, if I remember correctly. And it takes place over multiple different time frames. So this game is not set in one time frame. It jumps around a lot. It has a lot of stuff that takes through a lot of different stuff that happens with the overall world and these characters. And there's great development, fantastic voice acting. The animation is superb, and hands down, this ranks up there with the top tier of soundtracks. Once again, Final Fantasy XVI knocks it out of the park with its soundtrack. Hands down, I love this. Everything goes perfect with the game that you're playing. Now, that's all great and fine and dandy, but you're like, hey, Nate, well, what is the game actually like? Well, I will say this and let you know right now, it is very linear. There are some areas that are quite open area that you can kind of explore, but it's not a giant open world game. And mostly it's linear that carries you through to tell the story of these characters. And it's not bad. It's done in a very good way. It really is. Hands down, graphically, this is actually current gen. I got it right. I said current gen. I didn't say next gen or past gen. Current gen. I don't believe that this would be able to actually play on last gen systems. That's why this is actually a PlayStation exclusive for close to 6 months, I believe. But eventually it will actually come out on other systems. Just don't expect this thing on Nintendo Switch. I don't see it ever coming out on Nintendo Switch. Honestly, this game is rather long too, but it's not it doesn't overstay its welcome. You're looking at about maybe 35 to 40 hours to get through the main story, and that's not counting any sort of side missions that you do with other characters. Now, I think after the third part of the game is where the side missions of these other characters really actually flesh out and allow you to go and dive deep with them and actually realize a lot of these backstories of these other side characters on their missions, which is actually done quite well. At the beginning, not so much. At the beginning, it seems like kind of plain and bland and point by point, but as it goes, it does open up, and it does actually have a lot of stuff that gets rather deep. Like I said, Clive is able to have up to 3 different I'm going to call them summons, aka icons. He can switch through his adventure. And I will say this, for a Final Fantasy game, this seems a lot more focused on action instead of role-playing. Now, what I mean by that is you still have your different abilities you can unlock and stuff like that, different abilities. Now, as for the overall game world, is divided into 6 different nations where basically all the nations just hate each other. It's all just a power grab, a power hungry superpower move where they all have their own icons basically that are attached to their dominance. Pretty much people that are like nuclear weapons. And they use them as a power play to actually try to take over different lands and stuff like that. It's rather deep, it's rather disturbing, complex, and really gory. And I have to say, this is actually superb. Considering that Yoshi P worked on this from Final Fantasy Online, it shows in terms of the grittiness of the overall story. Like I said before, it's got a lot of stuff that harkens back to Final Fantasy Online, but nothing that you'll have to really worry about. Now, the other thing I have to point out is when you're playing this game, there's so much lore in it. They have so much lore that's going on. At any time you can hit a button and it can bring up this thing, this menu that lets you teach you about more lore. So if you're like, okay, what's this mean or what's that mean? What did he say? You can bring up this really cool menu that will actually help you and figure out what the heck is going on, which is fantastic. That is super deep and super cool. And it does have a new game plus mode, which I might add actually has something known as Final Fantasy mode that bumps up and changes all the enemies as you play through the game again and bumps it up to where level goes up to 100. Now keep in mind, I got to play this before the official launch, so it does have some current issues. I've been playing it since it's only on PS5 on the performance mode, which is supposed to be locked at 60 frames a second. Now, honestly, it's not at 60 frames a second. It's had some issues, but that is something they're supposed to iron out with the first patch that's supposed to launch at launch. Now, as for overall gameplay with this title, the best way to describe it is when you're controlling your character on foot, Clive, you do not control any of the other characters. You'll have some NPC characters like your dog buddy that'll help you and some other people that show up. Sid makes a great return, which is fantastic. But basically, one button is your normal hack and slash attack. Another button is your magic attack. Then you have another trigger button that does your super attack. You have a counter move, aka roll ability. And so it's not super deep, but honestly, the best way to describe this is it plays a lot like Devil May Cry. Now, what I mean by that, it's not super like mega combo like Devil May Cry, but it has a lot of aspects to it that reminds me of Devil May Cry, which actually is fantastic. It really is. And that's not really even talking about the icon battles. There's certain parts in this game where you actually play as these icons that you turn into or you control, and it's best described almost like a Godzilla kaiju sort of battle. And each one has their own different set of mechanics. Some of them are like a Panzer Dragoon where you're flying around and you move a cursor that actually selects stuff. Other things are where actually you control them. And, it's done in a really novel way to where it reminds me like a God of War with some quick time events. So basically the gameplay aspect of this game is on foot, almost like a light version of Devil May Cry. And when you're playing as the icons, almost like a God of War quick time event. It has some decent amount of stuff and it's super over the top. The soundtrack, like I said, is totally banging in this. The voice actors actually do a fantastic job in this. And honestly, like I said, it even has a new game plus mode where after you beat the game, you can go back and actually do what's known as Final Fantasy mode, where it actually changes everything in the game and all the enemies to where you'll go to an area and you fight different enemies that are more powerful, and you can go up to level 100 at that point. Honestly, the only thing I have to say I have to complain about with this, with being a role-playing game, is it doesn't really have that much role-playing to it. Now, what I mean by that is you have a very limited amount of items that you can equip, and most of the time it doesn't really seem to make that much of a difference. Now, when you first start out, you'll get certain rings that give you special abilities, and this is their way of making a easy or difficult mode to the game. Instead of having different modes to make the game easier to people, they give you these rings. Some of them are like perfect dodge, some of them slow down time when you're fighting monsters, and that's great. It's a novel approach to actually doing it. But at the same time, it takes up a gear spot, and you don't get that much gear space in this game. So honestly, one of the main aspects of a role-playing game is tons of gear and leveling up, and you get a lot of different moves that you unlock as you go through with your skill trees. But in the end, that is one of the main major faults I have to say with it, is the fact that it doesn't really allow you to equip that much gear, and you end up, it's pretty much one and done. But other than that, that's really the only nitpick I have to say with it. It looks great, it plays great, and hopefully with the day one patch, it will alleviate the issue with some lag that I've had. Because, like I said, I got to play it early, so we expect. They're supposed to be fixing it on the day one patch. But honestly, in the end, is there anything you felt that I left out on this review? Please leave in the comments below if there's any questions you have on this game. Please leave them for me, and I will answer each and every single one of them. Thank you for watching this review. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe my channel. And here at Devil Dog Gaming, we always end our videos by saying, have fun, play hard, and remember, people, the devil is in the details. Peace out until next time.